Welcome to the Messy Middle Road Trip podcast. Today, we are thrilled to have Carrie Rowan with us in the convertible. Carrie is an award-winning singer-songwriter and international best-selling author. She is a certified coach and founder of the Story Method. A teacher and speaker, Carrie uniquely combines the power of provocative storytelling with live music. She is also director of advertising with Spirit of Change magazine. Carrie spent a decade working for Fortune 500 companies before jumping off the corporate ladder to pursue her creative endeavors and inspire others to follow their passions. Born with a desire to inspire others, her contagious enthusiasm and charismatic qualities draw her listeners, readers to inspire, soothe, uplift, and guide you to tell a better story that is in line with your deepest dreams and desires. We know you'll love it, so let's grab the snacks, call shotgun, and hit the road for another episode.
I'm Sandra.
And I'm Nicole, and we're entrepreneurs,
Wives,
a mom,
a favorite auntie,
creative souls,
and women who are fearlessly navigating the middle of life.
We created a community of women over 40 who embrace the past, appreciate where we are now, and take action to live our best life because it's all about the journey. Hey, Carrie. Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
So nice to be here.
Oh, we're so happy to have you with us. Thank you so much for carving time out of your day to be in the convertible with us.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So we start off the show asking all of our guests our very famous, important question. If you could run off on an epic road trip with any person living or dead, who would it be? And bonus points if you know where you're going.
I love that question. And I'd given it some thought. I had a couple people in the car with me, and I really kept coming back to this one thought of this one person who has passed, actually. And it's Dr. Wayne Dyer. And he is just been such a mentor and really kind of like a father figure to me. And I talk about this in my book, so I won't give the whole story away, but there's actually a real strong tie between him and my dad had this real cool connection with Wayne Dyer. So Wayne Dyer, I want to go on a road trip with him, and I want to go see the Northern Lights. I've never seen that. Wouldn't that be cool to go with him?
Goosebumps.
Yeah.
And I think when you get somebody in the car who's already passed, can you imagine the stories they can share with you and the insights of being here and living on this plane and then being in another plane? So that just feels like something super exciting and a fun discoveries with him.
Oh, that sounds magical. I love that.
And I'm a big fan of Wayne Dyer as well.
Are you?
Yeah, I always, whenever I looked up inspirational quotes to kind of get my day going, I always gravitated towards his because they just made so much sense. So
yeah.
I think
so simple, but so huge, right?
Yes.
Well, clearly I'm going to have to look into Wayne Dyer because I don't know who he is.
You learn something new on this show.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. Yes.
Oh
He is amazing. You will love him.
Cool. Well, let's kick it off. I love stories of transformation. I wonder if you can share a little bit about your career experience working with Fortune 500 companies, before finding your calling and inspiring others to follow their passions.
Absolutely. It's funny because as I worked in Fortune 500 companies, I came right out of college into a really great internship program with a really strong company. And I learned so much and I loved it. I learned the business from the inside out. And it's funny how you're always kind of drawing in who you really are, no matter what application you're in or what job you're in. You're really always drawing on that core of yourself, whether you realize it or not, right? So even as I was in that job and I moved up the ladder, and they were always grooming me to be the next step and get into management. So as I went through the training and that's kind of stuff I love. I love learning. I love learning new things. So I was always doing that on the side. Even though I was in corporate America, I was still always trying to find the piece of the job that inspired other people. And I'll never forget this funny story. When they gave me my first kind of, quasi management role where I was in charge of one person. I just had to train them and teach them the ropes. And I loved it because the training was my favorite. So I decided I would take him to go see Tony Robbins. Now this was a long time ago, 25 years ago. Tony was not even he was not the big star he is now. He was doing a small little seminar in Worcester, Massachusetts, okay? And so I decide I'm going to take this new guy. He's totally a rookie. He's so green. He doesn't know anything about sales, the company, nothing. So I bring him with me. I'm like, this will be great. I'm going to inspire him, right? So we go. Of course, Tony's amazing. Nobody even knows who Tony is at this point, but I'm, taking notes and gathering stuff and sharing it with other people on the team. So we come back, and the next day, the kid comes in and quits because he was so inspired by going to see Tony Robbins that he had to start his own business. It was his dream. He couldn't thank me enough for inspiring him to follow his dream. And I was like, but wait a minute.
Wow.
They loved it. Is that so funny?
Nice job, Carrie. Nice job. Yeah.
So I inspired him to really follow what his dream was. And that's what I always did, even though I was there. And then when I had a team full of kids all out of college, and I would be responsible for doing the trainings, I loved that piece of it. I would pull in all the stuff from Tony Robbins. It's really a lot of what I do now, in that corporate setting. So I thought you might like that transformation story.
That's good.
But at that point, you weren't quite ready for your journey, right?
Well, what's funny? I think everything along the way gets you ready. Every pit stop, right? Everywhere you go is part of that GPS system that we don't really know is there, right? It's always leading us kind of the next step, because I always say my book is a culmination of all of my life's work. I needed every step that I went through to get where I am now. Without that corporate training, without understanding what that whole world was about and being able to have that success and understanding business allowed me to go and be an entrepreneur and start my music business and make a lot of gains in a business that is really hard to get ahead in. So all these things led me right here where I am today, which is kind of the neat part about it.
I love that.
That's cool.
That is cool. And so is a great segue to talking about your book. That's actually how I found you. I was ordering a book, and then yours popped up as a recommended, and I was like, oh, let's check this out. This looks really intriguing. So your book is titled Tell a New Story, 5 Simple Steps to Release Your Negative Stories and Bring Joy to Your Life, which who doesn't need that? Like,
we all do.
We all need it
nowadays, right?
Yeah, no kidding.
Yes. And so, like you were saying, I read that this book is basically a compilation of decades of your thoughts and insights. What finally inspired you to sit down, write this out, and share it with the world?
Well, that's a great question. Like, I always knew in the back of my mind that I would write a book. I was an English and psych major in college, and I loved writing. Like, everybody in the corporate world would always come to ask me to write their letters that they were sending out. So I was always still writing in just a different capacity. So, but the big thing that happened is I had an amazing coach, Nancy Levin, who works for Hay House. And we were doing some coaching. And at the same time, this Wayne Dyer, of course, speaking engagement came up. He does these writing seminars. This was the last one actually he ever did before he passed. And so synchronicity would have it, right? When these things come to us, it's not a coincidence. She offered me 2 tickets for my girlfriend and I to go. A friend of mine who's also interested in writing a book. So we're like, we have to go. We have these tickets. We got to find a way to get there. So knowing that I was going to that made me actually sit down, and all those ideas that I had floating around in my head forever, which is where you write the book first, I just put my outline on a piece of paper. And once the outline, I always tell people, it's just take one baby step towards your dream, just one piece of action. And writing down that outline really made everything else come easily. So then I went to the Wayne Dyer thing, and I actually got to meet him and shake his hand and hand him one of my CDs. It was like amazing. And then that led me to have a contest at the end of it, right? But life kind of kicked in. I didn't get to submit my proposal at the end of the contest because some whole debacle happened with my daughter's school. And that's what life does, right? And so I had to handle that. But the next year I said, you know what? I really want to do that. I want to be part of that. So I joined an online class and ended up getting the proposal done. And writing that book proposal, step 2, was what really solidified it. Because then it was real. I had the chapters, I had the outline, I knew where I was going. I had to write 2 sample chapters, I had to do the research. So then, just being at the magazine, I actually had a client who was a publisher. One thing led to another, and here's my book. And that's the way it happens, right?
Yeah, it was almost like you created your own roadmap.
Absolutely.
you know, one piece after the other, it kind of got you in the direction that you needed to go to make it happen. Because, you know, there's a quote out there that I love. It's something along the lines of, a goal without a plan is just a wish.
Yeah.
And it's very easy to be thinking about these things all the time. But then when we have something that activates us and gets us like doing those baby steps toward the thing that we really want to do, then that's when it really happens.
It's so true. And they say that 80% of people have a book, and they feel that they have a book inside of them. But that's the hardest part. And people always ask me that. Well, how did you write it? Like, how did you find the time? And well, it was really all up here, right? We all have our idea up here. And it is. It's just a matter of writing it down and getting it onto paper. But it's the same thing with music. Before I had enough songs for a CD, I would journal and I would write every morning. You want to keep doing what it is you want to do in whatever format works for you. And then all of a sudden, you know, the words would come out and the stories would come out, and then the songs, the lyrics, the rhyming, and then the songs would come out of what started just as my feelings, pouring them out on a piece of paper. And then I had enough songs for an album, you know, and so I talk about this in my book, and I talk about some cool ideas and some tips that you can use to help yourself be more creative. And like you said, take little baby steps towards those goals that we want. And before you know it, it's like, wow, like when my book came in the mail, I was like, whoa, I wrote this thing. You know, it's like, it's all about manifesting. And I think you said it best, Sandra. I really did create that in my own mind. And then by following through on my plan, it turned into a manifestation, which is so powerful.
Well, I wonder if you can share some tips with our listeners based on some of the steps that you've created and discuss in your book.
Mm-hmm. Sure. You mean the 5 steps to release your negative stories?
Yeah.
So, you know, when we're talking about stories and we're really getting the mindset of what that means to people, you know, we don't realize what stories we tell. And we might have a story that we tell about that big project that we want, you know, or that goal that we want, that we don't even realize is hiding underneath and really stops us from accomplishing our goals. So in this book, what I do is take you through the STORY acronym, STORY, and the 5 steps, just in a nutshell, because obviously I have a whole book that explains it. But the thing that makes this book really different is that I really get you to roll up your sleeves and dig in. You're going to have a story journal. We're going to do some story catching. And I think that's the most important part of the book, is really getting you to become self-aware of what your stories are, right? So you might have this big goal that you want, but you don't realize you're telling yourself this story. Oh, you'll never do that. I can't do that. Oh, I'm so stupid. Or whatever that little catchphrase is a story. It's a story you tell yourself inside. So the first thing we tackle with the S is your state of mind. We need to learn how to manage your state of mind, because you know what the cool thing is? Your state of mind determines the stories that you tell, but the stories that you tell can also determine your state of mind.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Absolutely.
You ever notice that?
Yeah, totally.
You could be in a great state of mind and your friend calls you and she wants to hear all about that horrible situation that happened 2 days ago, but you're over that now. You're already feeling better. You really don't want to talk about, but what do we do as humans? Because this is our form of communication, right? We want to tell that friend because we owe it to her to tell her, or we just, she's asking, so we feel obligated to tell her. Instead of saying, hey, you know what, that's going to put me back in that bad mood. I don't want to go there. So that's how stories change our state of mind, for better or for worse. So we really get into mindset, which is the first step. And we spend a lot of time talking about mindset. And inside the book, for each of the 5 steps, if I could show you a really cool thing here that makes the book totally unique, are the QR codes. So my book is interactive. And each of the 5 steps has a meditation. See that little code? You just take your phone, swipe it over the QR code, and instantly the meditation comes up. So as you're going through each step and you're working through each step, you have a meditation that you're listening to. And the meditation and meditating in general really helps you become more self-aware. So once you're becoming more self-aware, you're starting to notice these stories that you didn't even know you had hitting on and how they're affecting your state of mind. And then we talk about the T, which is your true intention, because our stories really serve a great purpose and a higher purpose, and they have a lot of noble intentions. Maybe we're trying to get a need met, or we want to ask somebody for help, or we're not sure how to tell somebody we're upset about something, so we tell a story. There's a lot of reasons why we tell stories, and we delve into that in the book. And then the O of the acronym is the outcome, right? Begin with the end in mind. The old Stephen Covey, remember that book, 7 Habits? It's still a great, of highly effective people. It's still one of the best sellers on Amazon, okay? We used to study that back in my corporate days. But it's so important to realize, what's the outcome? We're talking about maybe accomplishing a goal. What's the outcome of me telling this story? How does it affect me? How does it make me feel? And even more importantly, how does it make you feel, my listener? And that's where a lot of people have an aha moment with their stories. They think it's this personal thing that is really in a bubble. But my story affects everybody around me if I'm carrying that same negative story around. So we take a look at that and try to understand the long term of our stories. And then the R is the reframe. I love the reframe. The reframe, we talk a lot about that in the book, and I give you a lot of examples. The reframe is really, how do I change my lens on this? How do I take my most negative story, and I tell a lot of really personal stories in this book, and how I turn my stories around. Because when you can see my stories are a reflection of your stories, right? All of our stories really have a very similar theme in a lot of cases. And you start to recognize yourself in my story, and oh, I do that, or oh, I say that. And it's a really powerful way to learn through storytelling. So when we can start to uncover and see our story through a different lens, and how actually our biggest negative story is probably our biggest turnaround story. And who doesn't love a turnaround story?
Yeah, I love the reframe. I have found that to be one of the most powerful things to do, especially as I get older. I really start to see things in new perspectives. I start to think, you know what? I really don't have time to waste anymore. And I certainly don't have time to waste on crap, like the things that we fill up our brain that actually don't mean anything. So it's time to move on from that. So a reframe is like, whoop, restart. Yeah, it's great.
It's a fresh start. It's a new way. And that's why therapists love it. Coaches love it, because it's, and sometimes it's easier for us to see somebody else's reframe, right? And that's why we can be helpful to each other. Hey, you know what? That might be it's unfortunate that happened, but what I see is this power in you, this strength in you that came from that story. I talk about polishing your pearls, and how through my greatest, adverse stories and negative stories and things that happened in my life that I did not want, and the tragedies that happened in my life, came this beautiful music, and out of that, that's polishing your pearls, finding something good, creative that you can do with this. To help somebody else, and raise it to a different level, and give your pain more meaning, really allows us to get through it and find that different lens and a different way to look at it. And then the last is the Y of the STORY. And the Y is the you. The you had the power all along, right? It's uncovering that power. It's taking back that power. And as you mentioned, Sandra, when we reach certain ages in life, it's a milestone. It's a line in the sand where you go, it's really not that important what other people are expecting of me or think of what I'm doing. What's most important is what I believe about it. And once you hit 40, 45, 50, you really stop caring a lot about that. When Wayne Dyer used to have a quote that I have right here on my wall that says, become independent of the good opinion of others and be free from the need for approval. And it's that freedom we're seeking. It's the taking our power back that we gave away to everybody else all those centuries before, right? And that's what we talk about and celebrate in the last step in my book.
Yeah. Well, I always love a good open-ended question. And I often like to ask the question, like, if you could make changes in how you interact with people, how you interact with yourself in the world, what would that look like? And so often I think people refer to judgment, they refer to what other people think of them. And if that didn't get in the way, they would be doing so much more. And I think there is real power in claiming yourself, having a reframe, and really trying to separate, right? Really separate from those thoughts that are not getting you anywhere.
Yeah, it's so true. And that's what we do. We're uncut through your stories. Your stories reveal so much about what your beliefs are. And the beliefs are what hold us back. We might have a goal and throw it out there to the universe, and it's a great goal, but and then our beliefs just get in the way and stop us dead in our tracks. Those old, rusty beliefs that somebody probably planted in there years ago wasn't even us. So you're right, Sandra, just really owning that we can decide. We have the choice. You know, happiness is a choice. Living a joyful life is a choice, because you can have a lot of stuff coming at you, and we've got so much coming at us right now. It's crazy. It's hard for our nervous systems, right? And I know we're going to talk a little bit about that. But we've got to take back power for the only thing that we have power or control over anyways, which is ourselves.
I think it's so interesting too, Carrie. I just want to share, and I know I've shared this on previous podcasts, but I'm in the midst of going through some holistic energy coaching, and it touches on so much of what you're talking about, because as a person who's really focused on my health and wellness and showing up the best version of myself, I had done all the external work and needed to work on all the internal things. But I think something that you said really resonated with me, because a lot of how we perceive ourselves and a lot of our story is really tied to our DNA. It's based on how we grew up, our childhood, what we inherited from our parents, our belief system. And to the point that in my journey, even going through certain emotional ties where we would talk about things and she would say to me, is this something you want to let go of? Like, you want to acknowledge, but you want to let go of and move on. And I would say, yes, 100%. And then she would do an energetic test on me. She's like, well, you got some work to do, because you're holding on to this in your DNA to your core. Like, your body and your brain actually believes this story, even though this is not who you want to be. And my mouth was to the ground, because I was like, you know, because you try to think that, okay, this is the frame that I want to put things in. This is how I want to reframe. This is where I want to be. But man, you really have to dig in and do the work. Like, it's just, you can't just snap your fingers. And
It's hard. It's so hard.
It is hard.
It's true.
So hard. And you know, like that whole, when you said how we're in control all along, I'm so visual. So the red clicking heels from Dorothy is what, like, into my brain.
Did you read my book? Because that's what I talk about.
Not yet. But I'm going to 100%. And I think it's really just so important, especially in midlife, to take a step back and really assess, because this is the time frame we're going through so much transition, whether it's new career, divorce, empty nester, maybe parents are passing, all these things that make up and question, all right, is this a story I want to tell about myself? Is this who I want to be moving forward? So, Carrie, can you share, why do you think it is so important, especially in midlife, to really write a new story for ourselves? It's like those choose your ending stories that we all used to read as kids.
It's so true. I mean, everything you said is absolutely resonates with me, Nicole. I totally agree with that. It's important in midlife, because like I said before, it's like a line in the sand. You know, you're no longer willing to tolerate a lot of what you were willing to tolerate before. It's just, you know,
it's true.
You've just decided, I don't need to carry that. You know, I talk in the book about dropping the bag of bricks. You know, we're dragging this huge bag around with us, you know, and we put so much in that bag, it gets really heavy after a while. And when you start unloading it and throwing stuff out and deciding that you don't need stuff for stories, it's a really, really powerful moment. And it's, you know, you mentioned something that's really super important. You mentioned doing the work. And I think at midlife, we're way more open to getting inside and doing the work. We don't care as much about the external stuff, and everything's changing anyway, so we have to let that go. But inside the book is, at the end of every chapter, it's very detailed. There are very detailed exercises. Somebody, it was interesting, actually wrote a review on Amazon that said, oh, I thought this was going to be such an easy, fun read. And it is all that, but actually she made me dig in and get my journal out, and I had to work through these exercises and talk about some of these stories I didn't even know I had or didn't want to have. So I really make you roll up your sleeves and dig in. And I think also at midlife, we need tools. We need better tools for self-care. We decide that we're going to be a priority. Like you mentioned, maybe the kids are gone, or everything's changing. And as they're flowing out of the nest and they're leaping into new experiences, we need to leap into new experiences. We need to start to decide what it is that we most want to do with the rest of our lives. Look at Louise Hay. She didn't start her empire until she was 60 years old.
That's amazing.
I love that story. Hay House was not developed until she was 60 years old.
Wow.
And I always remind myself, because here I am again, starting another grassroots something. And hey, Louise was 60. I'm not 60. I got plenty of time to do this, you know? So it's really, really empowering. So I think it's super important at midlife for all those reasons, but we also have different intentions, right? Our intentions, as everything else is shifting in our body and our minds, our hormones, but also our mindset shifting. Our intentions and our priorities are shifting. And when you have new intentions, you have to embrace those intentions. But you also have tools to do it. You know, you mentioned, what can I do? How do I release this? How do I get in there? And I think the exercises in the book really help you get in there. And then I also share, I'm really into energy medicine as well. So I share, EFT tapping, which is a great way.
I've done that.
Oh, I love tapping. It's easy once you learn how to do it. And I have a video because my book's interactive. And so there's a little QR code with a video that shows you how to do the tapping, what the tapping points are, what you say, to help you release some of those stories that really feel stuck for you. So we need tools, and we need more self-care. And we need to decide that we're a priority. So I think all those things are super, super important in midlife. And a lot of it just naturally is coming out from us. And we just need to channel that where we want it to go.
Yeah. It's funny, when you were talking about intention, at first I thought you said attention. And I think both of those things actually come into play. What it is that you're focusing on at the time, and what what your intentions are in that direction, and then having the time and energy to devote to whatever it is that you're wanting to change or do differently, or, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I wonder if we can talk a little more about story coaching and
Sure.
what that entails for clients that decide to work with you in that regard.
Sure. Well, this is what we do, right? We go through where are you at in your life? Where do you want to go? Let's take a look at, we really dig even deeper into the exercises and some of the tools. Let's look at your problems as opportunities. Let's look at what part of your life feels like it's not working. And I actually use meditation to help them figure out what part of their life they would like to see some improvement in. But let's also talk about what is working and why that's working for you. It's really important to look at what's working in our lives, because it's so easy to look at what's not working. It's always right there in our face, staring at us. So you mentioned attention, and I think attention and focus are a huge, huge, huge part of this. I talk a lot about focus in the book, because what you focus on is what you get more of in your life, right?
Yeah.
Whether you want it or not, that's the counterintuitive part to it, whether you want it or not. And sometimes we get so worried and anxious, focusing on things that we have no control over, and guess what we're bringing more of into our lives, even though it's what we don't want. So we talk a lot about that. We really get into the stories and the beliefs that are holding you back. What is it that you want to achieve? And let's talk about how to get there and what you think has stopped you. Let's uncover those beliefs and come up with a new one, because really, a belief is just a thought you keep thinking over and over and over and over. It's really not any more difficult than that. How do we change that thought? How do we change the mindset? Because when you change our mindset and you raise your emotions from a lower vibration emotion to a higher vibration emotion, you're not going to want to think those stories. You're not going to want to talk about those stories anymore. So it really comes down to teaching you how to change your mindset and live at a different level than where you've been living. So it's all this together.
Yeah.
I would love to jump in and just ask Carrie, with the clients that you've worked with who have done the work and really dug in to transform and reframe these stories, how have you seen their transformation? it must be amazing working with clients and kind of seeing that aha moment. Like, can you share a little bit about some stories with the clients that you've worked with and what the growth they've gone through?
I think for me, like when somebody, it's all about self-awareness. If I can help somebody be more, because we have all the answers inside of us. I'm just guiding you to that, right? You already know what you value most and what you honor most. We already have all the answers. We really do know what our next step is, right? But sometimes we need to just tweak our GPS a little bit. So for me, when I can teach somebody, you know, the old saying about teach a man how to fish, when I can teach you how to do this for yourself, then my job is done, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I want to teach you how to become empowered, how to become self-aware. So for me, those are the biggest and most satisfying stories, you know. And I had this one gal who it was such an aha moment for her to realize how her stories were affecting everybody around her. She didn't realize that. She never looked at it as if it was not just her story, it was affecting every single person she was intimate with in her life.
Well, that's so human nature,
Isn't
right?
it?
Like
right.
We are all like this.
In our own little bubble.
And we're not paying attention to, unless you're really keen into it. Yeah, you're in the zone.
Right.
Because I've said that to my kids even.
Yes.
Nobody cares. Nobody's paying attention to you. Stay in your lane and do your thing. Like, honestly.
Oh my gosh, but they're
so worried about everybody else's opinion.
And that's where they are. And that's so appropriate for the stage of their development, right? And where their brains are, right? Yeah. And so as we get older and we start to grow out of that, it's so easy for us to see that, and they have a hard time understanding that. But so for this gal, just realizing that, just opening her, and it was so important to her that for her, it changed her instantly. It was just that powerful, you know. And for other people, I find a lot of negative self-talk that's really old, that's been maybe like handed down from a well-intentioned parent or something. So really discovering that and teaching somebody how, just again, waking up their awareness to the fact that, wait, would you say that to your best friend? If you're, you know, would you talk to your best friend like that? So how can we reel that back in? How can we talk to ourselves like we talk to our best friends? Because that will make the biggest difference in your whole life. So, you know, those are just some of the things that I found they seem small, but they're really big. And pulling your lens back, you know, like you were saying, and seeing the whole picture of what's going on with your stories. They're not really just your stories. If you look at the history of stories, they're passed down through generation from generation from generation. They're trying to teach somebody something. So that's the power of our stories. When you can grasp how powerful your own story is, whether it's the one you repeat to yourself or the one you repeat to everybody else, and you start taking a look at that, it just takes on a momentum all of its own, and you no longer want to tell those stories.
Well, and I wonder if I could just jump in real quick. One of the things I discovered when we first went into lockdown around the pandemic, I found that I had so much more time to look at the things that I was doing, particularly around my business, that weren't working, and the things I was telling myself. And I was so grateful to have that time to really reassess and reflect and just look at them in a different way. And I feel like over the 3 months that I wasn't working, I looked at my business in a whole new way. I looked at myself in a whole new way and made some real changes so that I could set myself up for success. But if we're going and going and going, just chucking along, doing what we always do, things are not going to change. So there has to be a time for reflection and to step back to be able to really see things a little differently.
That's so true. That's so true, Santa. Super insightful. And that's really what meditation allows you to do.
Yeah, totally.
You know,
yeah,
it's a little mini vacation every morning, you know. And I was describing it the other day. I like to think of it, because a lot of people will say that to me, but I can't meditate, you know, I can't get my mind. It's not about trying to control those thoughts, because we can't really do that. But what we can do is get ourselves and our body in that place to receive the quiet. You know, it's just quieting your mind for a short period of time. You know, and that's, yes, this whole pandemic has given us some extra time. And that's the question, what are we going to do with it? Are we going to start a practice for ourselves every single morning that reminds you of what's important before you even start your day? Are we going to start to practice gratitude? You know, there's so much around us that is out of our control. So like you said, this is some time that we can look at it in a positive way. What, you know, as I say to my kids all the time, I know guys, but we got to make the most of it, you know, and because this is what it is and there's nothing we can do. Can you go out and change that situation? Can you open up your college? No, you can't do any of that. But what you can do is find a way to manage yourself around it and to get a different thought about it.
I want to add one last little story, and then I want to ask you another question about storytelling and music. But in regard to meditation, I resist it always because being in that quiet space can sometimes be scary and a little hard. I remember reading this book that was giving me exercises to, I don't know, explore where I was with my business, where I was as an individual. Mm-hmm. And one of the exercises was, I want you to take 10 minutes to meditate on this one question. I can't remember what the question is, but it doesn't matter. And I thought to myself, oh, maybe I'll skip to the next question. And then I said, Sandra, you're on a plane. You have nowhere else to be. Let's do it right now. And I meditated for 10 minutes. I asked myself that one question over and over again. And it was really like a magic. The information that came to me that actually in that moment shifted some things in my business that I would not have been able to do in a regular thought process. That meditation changed everything. Mm-hmm. So that's my little story.
Absolutely, because what does Einstein say, right? You cannot solve the problem with the same mind that created it. So you're changing your mind.
Yeah.
It's really the only thing we have the power to change.
Yeah.
So when you change
it's amazing.
What did you say, Nicole?
You cannot solve a problem. Say that again.
You can, yeah, the Einstein quote, you can't solve a problem with the same mind that created it. So you have to bring your mind to a different level. Well, how do you do that? You do that easily through meditation.
Yeah.
And, you know, like you said, Sandra, you already have the answer. You already had the answer. You allowed yourself to go to a different level. You quieted your mind for 10 minutes. See, that's all it took. 5, 10 minutes.
I know, right?
Not asking for an hour.
Yeah.
5, 10, 15, I don't care what it is. If it's 2 minutes in the morning when you wake up. But what you're allowing is, I like to think of it as you're allowing space, right? You gave yourself the space. And when you sit there in quiet, you're quieting your mind. And when we relax our body, our minds automatically follow. You already know how to do it. You're not learning a new skill. When you lay down every night in bed, for those first few minutes, you know that beautiful feeling of the bliss just before your body's relaxed, now your mind's relaxed, you're actually in that alpha state. And that's the same exact thing you do in meditation, except you're not going to go to sleep. You're going to keep your mind awake and your body's going to relax. Yeah. So you're creating this space. And when you start to create that space, it starts to accumulate each day over each day over each day. And like you had said, Sandra, it was so easy to have the answer to your solution was right there all the time. We already know the answer. Yeah. We just have to let ourselves rise to get there. And that's the space. So when you create the space every day intentionally through meditation, you get to carry that calm with you the rest of the day.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, and that space gives you a chance to either react with your knee-jerk reaction, which now you have the space to say, wait a minute, I want to choose I don't want to do the knee-jerk reaction. I want to choose a response. I want to choose a more mindful response to something that I would normally just react to. That's where change comes from, in that tiny little moment of space right there.
Yeah. I want to change gears a little bit because I want to talk about song. We've talked a lot about storytelling, and you're also a musician and a singer. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how the storytelling came together with song, you know, particularly during speaking engagements and what that looked like.
Sure. Well, a song is a 3-minute story. And so, you know, the songs were my first stories that I told publicly, right? Got on stage and told those stories first, like they're little piece of my heart coming out through my songs. And, you know, I had mentioned I was doing a lot of writing in the beginning on my first album. That was really cathartic for me, you know, and processing a lot of big emotions and grief and sadness and how do I go on with my life from here. And so it came out in the form of a song. That's how I told my story. And then I started to notice, and I always was telling stories about the songs, between the songs when I'm on stage and on mic, and you're always telling stories and talking, and people always responded to that and wanted to hear more and wanted to know more. And it sort of just evolved into, a traditional mode of storytelling has always been songs, and then drawing. We always use art to tell stories, right? Art always tells a story, and it's just a different application of telling a story. So by combining the two in either my book, because a bunch of my songs are in the book as well with a QR code. So when I'm explaining a concept or a story, and I feel like, okay, here's a song that I wrote about my dad, and I put that in, that connects the reader on you know how music is magical and it's the universal language. It connects somebody on such an emotional level with my story that, like I said before, they can see themselves, they can feel the emotion of it, they recognize the emotion of it. So it was just natural for me to offer a speaking engagement when I finally had my book proposal, right? And I was like, we worked at the Natural, a friend of mine had a duo with me, and we worked at the Natural Living Expo. I called and got this gig at the Natural, which is the magazine that I ended up working for. And so we would sing to the audience when everybody was waiting in the turnstiles, hundreds of people to get in there. And then I thought, oh, look at all these great holistic classes. I could do a class on my book topic that I have my proposal here for. So I applied and I got a speaker slot, and I was like, wait, wouldn't it be cool if I combined that with my songs, and then I could share the song that I told about the story, and it could be this unique thing that could really engage people? And people loved it. And
Cool.
So that's where it evolved. And then one day I was like, I have got to get people my book, because everybody came up to me afterwards and said, where's your book? I want to get it. And I was like, I got to write that book.
How awesome. How awesome that you could bring those things together and have that discovery.
Yeah. It's really, like I said, it's all of my life's work into, this one unit here to share with other people. And really that's my mission, is to, if I can help somebody else by telling my story and my most personal stories, then I'm going to do that. Even if it puts me in this feeling of a little bit of vulnerability, because I'm sharing my stories. I'm sharing my stories so that people can learn from them.
Yeah, cool. That's good. Now, and were you always musical?
Oh, that's a great question. As a kid, I was always musical. And here's the thing I've discovered about passion, right? The things we're most passionate about are usually the things we did when we were kids. So as a kid, I don't know why I was born like this. I was super optimistic. I was always inspiring people as a kid. I'd leave my dad little sticky notes to quit smoking, like all over his mirror. It just reminded, I was like 7 or 8, but I always wrote poetry, and my aunts and uncles would always ask me, just write me a poem for my birthday. So I was always doing that creative stuff naturally. I was putting on shows for the neighborhood. I would get all the kids, they'd come to my house, we'd practice, do the dance moves, we'd sing, we'd go put it on for the neighborhood. But then life kind of wrung it out of me, right? Like I did all this naturally as a really young child, but then when I went to high school, I was like, oh, that's not cool anymore. Let's do something else. Right? So like now we're all worried about what everybody else says. Oh, that doesn't look cool. I'm going to be a cheerleader and just blow my voice out for the next 8 years. So, but that too was a step along my way, right? So that's the irony. And then I went into corporate America, and one day I was like, really? Like, this is all there is? Like, I worked so hard to get here, and there's still this longing deep inside of me to do more, And that's when I went back to my music.
Yeah. Good thing you listened, Carrie.
It's a hard voice. I talk about leaping off that corporate ladder, and I landed softly on my piano bench, and it's like, it was a different part of life, right? I was stepping into a different part of life, and then I had my kids. And so writing was so natural for me because I was there with the kids. And then I had kids, so we were going to preschool. So, hey, I should be a preschool music teacher and inspire these little ones for the love of music. And so I did that for a few years because that's where I was, and that lined up with my kids and the stage I was at. And so one thing led to another thing to another thing. And so that's
fantastic. I'm in a Facebook wellness group, and the admin posted this question, and it just got everybody thinking. It asked, what was one thing that you absolutely loved and did endlessly as a child that you aren't doing anymore? And it could be play, it could be creativity, it could be interacting with friends, whatever it was. Post that in the group. We'd love to share your experiences. And some of the answers were amazing. And it was, used to go, jumping off the swing into the pond, the rope swing, or used to go rollerblading around my neighborhood, or, mine was, I was at the dance studio 24/7,
Wow.
just taking classes. And like you said, things, life happens, you drop out of things, you come back in. I'm so happy for you that your musicality came full circle and you really were able to step into that passion again and share that with the world, because clearly you've got stories to tell and a voice for that. So
Well, thank you. I love that. And it's so true. I mean, they say that that's what our inherent passion is, the stuff that we did as a kid. So I hope, Nicole, that you will sign up for a dance class for yourself soon.
I know. I did do a tap class for a little bit, but it was really hard to juggle it with all the kids stuff. But I want to get back in a ballet class. Like, there's nobody's business. So
Yeah.
I'm putting it out there. It's my goal for
Get it on your list.
for 2021. I'll wait a little bit. But
Ballet with a mask on.
Yes, totally.
I'm sure you could find a pretty lacy little ballet mask.
I'm sure, with little ballet shoes on. It would be fabulous. So, Carrie, for those that are struggling during these uncertain times, what are some actions that you can recommend that our listeners can really do today to feel better? And I know meditation would definitely be one of them for sure.
Oh, I'm going to say that. I think 3 tips that I would give that I find are really helpful, and they're not hard. There's something simple that you can do to change your mindset. So I think the first thing I'd recommend is have a morning routine for yourself. I mentioned that. Have that morning routine. It's non-negotiable. Okay, I know we are all so busy. Even if you have to get up 15 minutes before, 15 minutes earlier. So have a morning routine, whatever that means for you. Maybe you want to sit outside with your cup of coffee and soak in, some mindfulness from nature and just soak in the sounds. Whatever you do is up to you, and it's fine. I have my own morning routine where I do my meditation, and I have these little cards. I talk about them in my book. I used to call my vitamins, with my intentions and what I want to do. And I used to have my goals listed out on there. So whatever you find that works for you, but I like having that non-negotiable time. And it's time just for you. And everybody else starts to notice that's time, because when that starts accumulating, it might just be 5-10 minutes. You'll notice the momentum in the right direction when that starts accumulating. And number 2 is I like to teach people about gratitude, because gratitude's so powerful, right? Whether that's the gratitude book that you write in at the end of the day, and I talk about this in my book, but gratitude rewires our brain, right? Gratitude, I have a big sign in my kitchen, and it says, gratitude turns what we have into enough. And when our brains are so beautifully predispositioned to find what's wrong, and that's so easy right now. We are being bombarded every second by what's wrong. So you need to protect yourself and find that time to say, wait a minute, what's actually working in my life? What is it that's working? What have I done to make this work? And so you start to accumulate that. You get your brain used to looking for what's right, and it becomes a habit, and you start to rewire that. So spending a few moments in gratitude, when you feel yourself starting to get all stressed out during the day, you can stop and say, wait a minute, what's one thing I'm grateful for? Well, I'm healthy, my family's healthy. Okay, let's go with that. It doesn't have to be anything huge, although that is a huge thing these days. But look for one thing. And that brings me to my next point, and my last step would be use your body. Like, we forget how powerful our bodies are, right? We're always in our minds. We're always up here in our heads, worrying, we're thinking. You can actually use your body, and I talk about this in the first 3 chapters, to change your mindset, right? So that's where our emotions are coming up from. That's where we're actually creating emotions through our body. So when you can get yourself out for a brisk walk and move your body differently, hold your head up, you're swinging your arms, you're actually crossing your energy patterns, which is the natural way that they flow. So when we can find ways to use our body, we use the tapping. We talked about tapping. And I do a Facebook Live class every Friday. And at the end of it, I always show one energy medicine move, whether that's tapping your K27 or your thymus for immunity. There's tons of little things you can do throughout the day. People always make fun of me because I'm walking around doing this. Whatever your thing, whatever feels right to you, okay? There's a lot of different moves that you can do. But find a way to use your physical body. When you start, your energy starts sliding down, you start feeling anxious, maybe you do a little tapping session right there at that minute. So there's a lot of great things you can do to use your body, because our bodies actually can determine our mindset, right? If somebody walked through my door right now with their head down and they were talking slow and their shoulders were slumped, we'd all know what they were feeling. So when we use our bodies to kind of fake our minds out, the body-mind connection is so strong that the body can actually tell the mind, hey, I don't want to be in that thought anymore. I want to be in a new thought, and I want to feel good. I really want to feel good. Make that your new intention.
Absolutely, because if you're moving, I know I have been in COVID, I've been committed to doing yoga every day, every morning, because it sets my mindset, it gets my body moving. I did it this morning, and on the days that I missed it, and it comes to the evening, I'm crickety, I'm sore, I feel not stretched. So my body is craving it because I've built it into a habit, into a routine, and I love it. And just taking 15, 20, 30 minutes to just move my body in that way, I think it totally taps into everything that you're talking about. So whatever your jam is, I agree with you. Whether that's a walk, whether that's a quick stretch, whether you're really into physical activity like going to the gym or running or whatever that is, swimming, playing with the kids outside.
Yeah, get outside on the kids' trampoline.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that can be dangerous. From personal experience, that's the big joke in my house is mom can't go on the trampoline.
Oh no, mom's
because, I dribble. So it's all good.
Oh my gosh. I want to show you gals something. I just purchased. It's a gratitude journal, and it's through the company that I get my planner from, which, to be honest, I realize I'm an electronic gal. The planner is lovely, and I do like writing things down, but I'm much more a Google Calendar lady. But this is a beautiful little journal that I just purchased, and excuse me, it is about gratitude and joy. And there, every page has a list of prompts, and you just fill it in whenever you like. And it is a great way to just finish out your day or start it wherever it makes sense.
Lovely.
Yeah.
I definitely recommend a gratitude journal at night. And my mom is so ahead of her time. She told me to do this, let's say I've been married 24 years. 25 years ago, she said, she probably saw it on Oprah, because Oprah is very big. Oprah says the one thing that was hugest aha for her was keeping a gratitude journal, coming up with 5 things and writing them down. So it's nice to have something beautiful to write them down in. But whatever works for you. My mom bought me this little tiny journal. I still have it, that says write down these, and I look at it sometimes to see, because my life was so different. I wasn't even married. I was going to get married that summer, and like where my mindset was at. And it is a great way to track time, right? Our kids are usually the real trackers of time. So it's a great way to track where you are and then where you're going.
And I have a fantastic habit hack. I'm actually listening to Atomic Habits by James Clear.
Oh, I know that book. Yeah.
Fantastic. But one of the things he says is, if you're trying to build a habit like a gratitude journal, but it's one of those things out of sight, out of mind, where you forget to do it because you're trying to stack your habits. He said, so if you get up in the morning, like say you want to do it before bed, get up in the morning, you make your bed, you put your gratitude journal on your pillow with a pen. So that when you go to bed that night, you're like, oh, I need to write in my journal. And you write your 3 things or your 5 things, and you put it to your bedside table. And then the next morning you do the same exact thing. And it helps you to stack those habits, because you're going to make your bed when you get up. Right? So
maybe Nicole, maybe.
Maybe.
I'm a wicked anal bed maker. I mean, the thing's still warm and I'm making it up. My husband's still in it. I'm like, I can't get on my side.
You get right around.
Oh my God, that's so awesome.
I love that. That's a great hack.
Yeah, that is a good one. I'm going to have to keep that in mind. Maybe it'll get me making my bed too, Nicole.
There you go. What's that book? There is a book that's Make Your Bed in the Morning, right?
Yes, you're right about that. Oh my gosh. Well, Carrie, this has been awfully fun. Thank you so much for being on the show. Can you tell our listeners the best way to connect with you, to either purchase your book, hear your music, talk with you about your coaching, all of that?
Sure. Well, it's been an honor being on your show. So thanks for having me and a lot of fun with you gals. So they can get on my website, of course, carrierowan.com. And it's CarrieRowan. And get on there. And there's a lot of resources on there. There is a link to my book. You just get on Amazon and type in Tell a New Story, because I'm now the first thing that comes up there. And I also do a 15-minute free consult if you're interested in finding out more about my coaching and what I do and how it could work for you. So contact me. I have a contact page on my website. And please join my Facebook Live. Just get on my Facebook page, which is Carrie Tunes, Carrie, the word tunes, Tunes. Because every Friday at noon I'm on there and I'm giving tips for how to feel better in these uncertain times. It's called What's Your Story? And we have a lot of fun on there. And then it opens up for question and answer at the end. So that's a really neat thing. It's just my little give back that I do for people.
Oh, that's
Great.
fun. And we can definitely, link that Facebook group on our
Great.
Facebook page as well, so that people can find you. And I know prior to the podcast, we chatted about this, and we will certainly work out the details after this recording, but we want to let our listeners know that we're going to do a Messy Middle Road Trip podcast book club with Carrie's book. Our followers tune into this and participate, and we're going to plan to go live on our Messy Middle Road Trip Facebook page and kind of kick things off for the book club, and we'll figure out the details, but we'll also put the link to get Carrie's book. So I would think with all the QR codes, having an actual book in hand is going to be the best thing to do, as opposed to me. I always binge audibles when I'm in the car, but I think getting those extra interactive things in a paper copy book would be the way to go.
Yeah.
So we'll make sure that we put all the links out there, and we'll share the details as we figure them out. We're building the plane as we fly, so
So put your seatbelt on.
it's going to be so exciting. So
I love it.
Carrie. Thanks so much again for being here today.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. A lot of fun.
Absolutely.
I love the work you guys are doing.
Fantastic. We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Messy Middle Road Trip podcast and feel empowered to rewrite your negative stories to bring more joy into your midlife.
If you want to keep the conversation going, visit us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, or at themessymiddleroadtrip.com. And if you like what we're doing, please consider subscribing to the podcast and leaving us a rating. We love that, and a review can help reach more amazing middlers.
We're looking forward to our next road trip with you. Until then, thanks for riding shotgun.